Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Stretch Professor, and today we're going to be doing the support tier list for patch 11.6. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Come by, check out the stream. Starts around 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually goes till about 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. We'd love to have you. And then we do lots of fresh tier lists and patch notes for every patch, and we have lots of topical guides, like really in-depth guides for individual champions like Recon, like Maokai, like Lulu, and I'm going to be adding some more there. And then we have topical guides like best one trick, how to macro better, how to micro better, how to manage your vision score, what is dodging, when should you dodge, and dozens of other guides. So be sure to check all that out. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So thank y'all for waiting for me. I know I've had a really busy week and I'm a bit late on this tier list, but I am going to release all of the tier lists this week, and then I'll be more prompt on the next patch next week. So let's go ahead and get in here. As far as the patch notes themselves, what's going to impact support? There weren't that many changes, I believe, that are going to impact support. Akali got buffed. Gnar and Hecarim got nerfed. Karthus got nerfed. LeBlanc got nerfed. Lilia. Pyke got buffed, but it didn't affect his win rate that much. I don't think he's going to be that great. We'll talk about Pyke in the tier list. Couple other buffs. You see Volibear might be a little bit better in the jungle here. Zen is kind of the new hot one that a lot of people are trying out. I don't think he's going to be that great. It's interesting. People are trying out different builds, so we'll have to stay tuned and see what's up with that one. Items. Now, this one is a little significant. This is going to help poke champs out because they are nerfing a lot of the healing items. Like Shield Bow is getting nerfed. Blade of the Ruined King. Sterix is a big one that's getting nerfed. It's still really good, but maybe people won't get it as much. And then Leandry's is going to become a lot stronger, which means that people might move away from stuff like Night Harvester, which means they'll be squishier. Same thing with Luden's Tempest. So Night Harvester and Protobelt are getting a lot worse, which is nice. It's going to make people squishier. Rabadon's Death Cap, again, it's going to make people squishier. People might get this maybe instead of Zonya's in some cases, or Banshee's Veil, or Demonic Embrace. It just becomes a much more attractive kind of squishy item. And then they are directly nerfing the Seekers and Verdant, so that means it's less likely that people are going to be getting Banshee's Veil, which again is really good news for a lot of supports on the list. We'll talk about it in a second. Shirley is getting buffed, so that's good for Recon. Maokai might use this. I don't think there are a lot of other champs that are going to make use of this, maybe situationally on some enchanters. The Void Staff is getting nerfs. This is a little bit bad for someone like Maokai, but he does have backup options. And then other champs like Brand and Xyra may not like this too much, but again, they can probably go Demonic Embrace in some cases. Leandry's Demonic. And then we've got some of the runes like Fleet Footwork. Not a lot of people got this. I guess Caitlyn, maybe Kassadin, maybe some melee mids got this. Ravenous Hunter, however, pretty much everybody got this, and now it is not going to have any Omnivamp in lane, so poke is going to be a lot stronger, particularly in the early game, and it doesn't scale as well for late. And I don't think there are any major bugs that I just noticed skimming that. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get into the tier list proper. So I think that Maokai, I've kind of moving him back up to tier 1, and I know this might be a surprise to a lot of people, but he does have the highest win rate right now as far as like a decent play rate and a high win rate. Sona's pretty high win rate too. But he's got like a 2.73 pick rate, which isn't huge, but he's got almost a 54% win rate. So you might be thinking like, why Maokai? Why is he coming back? Well, a lot of it is what I just described, is a lot of kind of the tank champions are getting nerfed out, and the itemization, they are encouraging people to go for squishier builds, to build the Death Cap, to you know, avoid the Banshees, to maybe find something other than Sterix. And as far as like popularity in the jungle, I think that some of the tanks have been falling off in favor of let me just pull this back up here, in favor of some squishier champs. So if you look at pick rates here, you do have Hecarim, but he is kind of squishy early on, and then Lee is going to be squishy early on. Kha'Zix, Kayn, Graves, a lot of these are going to be pretty susceptible to those seeds. They don't want to build a lot of magic resist. Udyr is still around, but he's a lot less popular than he was. Udyr and Skarner are problematic for those seeds because they do have inherent shields, and typically they will build things like I forgot what it's called. The blue item, the magic resist item that gives them extra movement speed. I'll think of the name here in a second. But typically they will get, or they can get that item second if they want to, and they have a shield, so they're really good at kind of running through those seeds. So Udyr and Skarner becoming less popular is also really good overall. And as you can see, kind of scrolling down from there. So you're not seeing a lot of the Sejuanis, the Udyrs, the Skarners. People aren't picking them. They're still pretty good, but people just aren't playing them as much. So that makes your seeds a lot more valuable. The Shrelia's build is one that I haven't really tried out a ton, but it does have a high win rate right now, where you can go Shrelia's into sort of tank build, Shrelia's with potentially Aftershock, or you could get just some other type of tank item like a Dead Man's Plate or something like that with it. So not super popular, but does have a 57% win rate. Other tank items you can get with him are Turbo Chem Tank and Dead Man's Plate. And this is good if you really need some hard engage on something like a Jinx or a Twitch or that type of thing, and you need to frontline. You can go for that Turbo Chem Tank, and it is going to have a high win rate, and then you can go for something like a Dead Man's or a Thornmail next. So pretty good if they have a lot of AD and if you really need to get in there and engage. And then you would max your Q if you go for that build, just to save on mana, because it's the same mana at every level. I think it's 60 mana at all levels. And obviously you're not going to have a lot of mana regen or flat mana with Chem Tank into Thornmail. So you can't really max seed. But the seeds do still stay up for quite a long time because you're going to be getting a good chunk of health. And they still do like 14% max health damage. I think when you trigger it, it's at least 12%. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's still good. Like, it's still going to do okay damage. It's still going to give you the vision. And so it's a pretty good build. So I wouldn't necessarily do that all the time, but it is nice. And then the mandate is still going to be solid as well. Just for the extra poke damage, giving that extra movement speed out, having high base damage, and then Demonic Embrace is going to be a little bit stronger just by comparison because they have nerfed a lot of the other items out there that other AP champs in particular might get, like the Void Staff and things like that. And he just uses Demonic really well because not only is it the burn damage, but he leverages that armor and magic resist really well when he gets in combat. So that is pretty good. I haven't really tried out the new Leandries. That is interesting that basically instead of shredding damage, it now you do a 12% increased damage instead of shredding magic resist. So I think that's going to be better against squishier champs. So it's weird because it's better if someone is stacking health but not stacking magic resist. But anyways, I haven't tried that out. Traditionally, this is not as good as Mandate, although it does have a similar win rate just because it's far more expensive. It's 900 more gold, and you don't need that much mana. It's okay. But anyways, I think most builds are either going to be Mandate into Demonic Embrace or Turbo Chem Tank into either Thornmail or Dead Man's Plate. So yeah, just very versatile. He's got the free vision with the seeds. Pretty good damage, great point-click CC with the W. It's going to lash on to Vayne, Ezreal, Lucian, anything with Gale Force. You just point-click. They can't dodge it. It's going to hit them. People are going to be running Zhonya's a little bit less because Arm Guard got worse. So that's good news for him. And then, of course, your R is just like really nice, big piece of CC. And your Q's pretty good, too. It's cost-effective. It has a displacement, so it can knock out like Tristana jumps. If you time it correctly, it can sort of cancel out Leona and a couple of other engaged champs. So just super versatile, pretty big damage option. And he's really good when he's not against other tanks or things that have shields that are going to get the magic resist, like the Skarner, like the Udyr. The fact they're shifting out is good. And he's also a good solid pick if you're not sure how good your AD carry is going to do. And AD carries actually have not been performing that well on this patch overall. They're okay. I mean, Jinx is like 52.5, Triss is 52, but there's a lot of stuff that's like in the 51, like Vayne, Jhin, stuff like that. So I thought that they were going to have much higher win rates because they feel very strong, but overall it's not that great. And he is going to be really solid with Ezreal as well, just because you soften him up and you apply that slow with your seed, and then he can hit him very easily with the Q, and you have a lot of peel as well. So he's really good combo with stuff like Ezreal and Jhin and things like that, and he can still work pretty well with like your Kaisas and your Vaynes and things like that. So overall, I think he's positioned very well. He does have a high win rate. He's versatile. He's definitely blind pickable. I don't think there are really that many things that just hard crush him. If they have something like a Soraka or like a healer that can heal through the seeds, Lulu maybe, with Moonstone, that can be a little problematic. But other than that, I think he does have a good matchup into a lot of things. Okay, and then and I'm going to try to see if I can do this in 30 minutes. I know it's always the meme, so we're going to move kind of quick here. Recon is another one that I think is really strong. We did mention earlier that the Mythic change, the Shirelias, is really nice for him. I mean, getting that 15 extra seconds on that is good. And kind of like Maokai, he's just really versatile. He's a great blind pick if you're not really sure what your team's going to go or the enemy's going to go. Just because he can engage really well with his W, with his R, but then he can also peel pretty well. He has a really high scaling shield with a 1.6 AP ratio on both shield components. So that's very handy. And he can also build to be kind of a little tanky if you want to with like Zeke's. Gives you a little bit more survivability while also giving some extra damage to both your AD carry and potentially some AP options as well, because remember it does apply AP on hit now. So that works really well with a lot of different champs out there. Now, he can be kind of bullied out early on. He does have a repeatable shield, which is nice. So you can take, some hits early, especially if you go for biscuits and second wind and you're, hitting your Q fairly regularly. You can deal with some poke champs, but overall, you're not the most aggressive lane, but you're okay. It's really versatile, and he is pretty good against those movement champs too, everyone that has the Gale Force and the dash and things like that. Because he's not as good as Maokai, he doesn't have the point click, but you can run at him with your R, especially if you have Shirelias popped, and force them to use their movement speed first, and then after they use their movement, then you can use your W. So you do have to be careful against stuff like Morgana, Lux, Xerath, a lot of these things that have like a line shot stun, because you have to run at them, and usually they have enough notice where they can throw that, and you have to juke it. You either have to flash or you have to sidestep it. So that is possible, but that can be a little tricky to play around in some circumstances. Like Seraphine's kind of rough if she just like, you try to go in and she just ults and like hits your whole team, or like Sona and stuff like that. So if you position well though, he can perform really well. Also, he's just super safe in lane, and a lot of people are just turbo camping bot as per usual, and he's one of the best champs to get away from those ganks, and it's pretty hard to tower dive him as well because you have your ult and your W and you have your shield to protect people. So he's one of the best at kind of playing tower defense and kind of having a really defensive game plan if you're going to get turbo camped, which is probable in this meta. So, and he's good at dodging a lot of kind of the popular skill shot hook champions, your Leonas, your Nautiluses, your Threshes, and stuff like that. Like, he can get away from a lot of their stuff. Thresh is really a skill matchup. Like, he can flay back your W, but you can also bait the flay out of him if you run at him with the R. And you should be able to dodge most of his hooks. So it's kind of like both of them have a hard time, like, in skilled matchups where, like, getting on each other. So with skilled players, I should say, it's very difficult for either one of them to do anything, like, super aggressive, because they both have ways to stop the other one. But anyways, really strong and good aggressive options too, right? So you can go for kind of the defensive stuff, but if you want to do like Ardent Censer or Staff of Flowing Water, you can adjust. If your AD carry's really far ahead and it's a Twitch or a Jinx or something, you can go for kind of that sort of double buff on your team. Or if you have a really good team fight comp, or you need to counteract a lot of their AoE damage, you can even get something like a Redemption. So super flexible, very mobile, excellent champ. I think he's still going to be good. You do have to be very skilled on him though, so asterisk tier 1. And then Lulu, I think, is still going to be super strong right now. She is becoming very popular. She has a pretty high win rate, and a lot of this is just the hyper scaling AD carries, most notably Jinx, are getting picked very often, and she pairs really well because she gives the extra movement speed to help them kite, to help them dodge different things, and she gives attack speed, and she gives a really good attack speed steroid. So her picks, whenever you put E on somebody, does usually in the neighborhood of 100 extra damage per attack. So anyone that's attacking very quickly, that extra damage is adding up. Now, you don't get credit for that damage, your AD carry does, but it's very nice. And then you also have Polymorph against some of these like really pesky melee champs, your Rivens, your Yasuos, your Yones, and stuff like that, Echoes. You can just completely stuff them with that. It's point click. They can't dodge it. You do have to be careful because they can wind wall it, and like Master Yi can alpha strike. Like anything that goes where they go untargetable or that stops a projectile can stop it. So wind wall, Samira's thing, Braum shield, I believe, can block it. So there are some things you have to look out for, but it's going to work a lot of the time with the Polymorph. And then she also, most of her sort of utility is in shields and this infusion of health. And so that gets around Grievous Wounds really well. So she puts the opposition in a really weird spot because they want to get Grievous Wounds to try to counteract your Moonstone. But Grievous Wounds doesn't do anything else to your entire kit. So like Wild Growth, for example, just gives like a huge infusion of health, which is good, but it does not count as a heal. So that used to be a hindrance in the past when people were stacking a lot of plus healing and shielding, and you would get outscaled by the Soraka and the Sona and things like that. But since most enchanters are going Moonstone first, that has no plus healing and shielding stat attached to it, and then usually you're either going Staff of Flowing Water or Ardent Censer. So you're only getting like 10% plus healing and shielding a lot of the time. So you're not missing out on as much of that sort of opportunity cost by not being a proper heal. It actually is very beneficial because of all the Grievous Wounds. So there's that. You can use that proactively as well. So you can just use that on your tank that engages your Hecarim, your Olaf, or whatever, just for the knock-up and the extra slow that it adds, and you're not over-healing them. They get that extra health even on top of their base health. So it's kind of always useful. You can't over-heal with it. It's on a very low cooldown. It's got the knock-up. It's got the slow. It's a fantastic sort of single-target buff. And the same thing with W, the attack speed, the movement speed, and then the shield. So she's great at empowering a single target to be a lot stronger. She just doesn't have as much teamfight presence as something like a Seraphine or a Janna or whatever, who both have these big like AoE teamfight capabilities. But very, very strong, especially if you have an AD carry or any sort of just auto attacker that's going to be good. She's great. So I would pair her with like a Jinx, Vayne, Kai'Sa, Twitch. A lot of stuff that works really well with her. Not so great with like Ezreal or Jhin. It's not unplayable, but it's a lot worse. So you can blind pick Lulu, but it can be tough. And if your AD carry is just like not good, if they're auto-filled, they're just having a bad game or something like that, it's going to feel really bad because your options are limited. You know, you don't roam that well. You can't engage and start fights that well. You can play around other positions, you know, speeding up an Olaf, speeding up a Darius or a Garen, like that is powerful. But it's a lot better if you're able to get the Ardent Censer and just really, you know, have your Twitch or your Jinx just start pumping. So, it's okay. I still think she's strong enough in her raw power in the best case scenarios. She's really strong, and she's, like, never terrible. Like, you can still do stuff. But I think she's just a little bit less versatile than the Recon and the Maokai, and that's why I have her down a bit. Okay, Leona, nothing much new here. She's just one of the best sort of pub stomper champs. She has really low cooldowns on her CC. Her Q is always 5 seconds. Her E can get down to 6 seconds. So she can just keep CCing. Great at locking down single targets. Her ultimate has huge range. It's like 1200 range on the engage. It's 90-second cooldown. Now, yes, if they have Gale Force, that does make it really annoying to work around her ult, or if it's like a Vayne or a Lucian or something that can dash out of it, or Ezreal. But you have so many other tools to get into the fight that you can wait on them to use their mobility and then use your R if that's going to be a problem. And there are going to be less Banshee's Veils, so that's pretty nice out there because they nerfed that Verdant Barrier. Now, her problem is if you are in a meta where you're going to get turbo-camped bot, which once again, that seems like that's happening more and more. A lot of these kind of full clear, you know, 3 times junglers like your Lilias and stuff like that, your Karthuses, are kind of, they're there, but they're falling out of the meta, especially at like Platinum and lower. You're seeing a lot more of these kind of gank-heavy junglers early on. And so that's good if your jungler comes down, but if you're getting turbo-camped and you fall behind, like, it's really, really easy to gank Leona because she has no escapes, and you're just going to die most of the time. So she is very good if you're ahead, if you're aggressive, especially you want to pair her with something like a Tristana or a Jhin. Fantastic combination. Just blow them up and just snowball the game. Start roaming middle, shut down that lane. It has a lot of snowball potential, super powerful. Lots of damage, lots of defense early on. Just going to have the standard kind of build. Most of the time, it's just going to be lock it into something like a Zeke's or a Knight's Vow. Although, if you are trying to get around some of these high mobility champs like your Ezreals, your Lucian, stuff like that, you can go for Turbo Kim Tank and then just run at them. You know, force them to use their mobility to dodge either you just running at their face and getting the slow, or to dodge your E if you get in range with the E and you're accurate with it. So that can give you some more options if you're against a highly mobile team. It is a little bit more expensive. It doesn't have as much team fight utility, but it's a good option to run down those fast champs. Okay, then going down to A tier. Now, Alistar is a little more controversial. I know that Double Lift is really high on Alistar. I've been watching a ton of Double Lift co-streams with Meteos, which are fantastic, by the way. I highly recommend that. He's a great commentator. He's super knowledgeable about ADC and support, and just he says a lot of stuff that I hadn't really thought about too much. And they're just kind of funny, like they're entertaining, but at the same time, he does share quite a bit of knowledge, and he's really smart. I know he comes off as kind of being, I don't know, just kind of like a memer or something sometimes, but when he gets talking, he's actually pretty smart. Meteos is pretty smart too. So listening to them comment, I think, is like really good compared to the normal LCS broadcast, which is okay. It depends on who the game commentators are for individual games. I think Azael's pretty good, but Double Lift and Meteos are great. So anyways, they talk a lot about Alistar. They really like Alistar, and the big thing that they always say about why he's so strong is it's just that guaranteed engage. It's so difficult to get away from him. And I didn't realize that his W scales with his movement speed, so he actually gets there faster when you have faster boots, like mobility boots. So that's what makes him one of the best Moby boots users in the game, is just because you can get in there so fast that people just don't have that much reaction time. And he can peel pretty well also. If you have to, like, you can headbutt and use your Q to sort of peel, whereas someone like Leona, she can stun people, but Alistar, like, literally pushes them away and makes it more difficult for people to run in. So, I don't know. I might have to try Alistar again. He's pretty good into poke lanes, too, because every so often, when so many minions die, I think it's like 7, then he roars and heals himself and his ally, which is nice. And it's the fact that they just say he's basically just unkillable in team fights. Like, you can just start fights almost with reckless abandon if people follow up, and it's just going to be impossible to kill you a lot of the time. So, he is good if you get proper positioning, if you get flanks. He's probably the best roaming support out there, but you do have to be careful leaving your lane so much. It requires really good knowledge about timings and waves and keeping up with flash timers and just understanding that if you roam, something good's going to happen. Because if you just roam middle and, like, you're not able to make a play, your AD carry is going to fall behind. At minimum, they're probably going to lose a wave of CS. And in the worst case scenario, they're going to die. And they're going to lose, possibly multiple waves. And they're going to lose tower plates. So you have to understand roam timings. And your AD carry kind of has to be on board with that. But he can definitely take over games if you're really strong on him. So similar to Leona, it's just going to be Moby Boots, lock it into Nice Vow. Now, there is a little bit of variation here. You can go Aftershock. That does allow you to dive even faster and kind of doubles down on the fact that you're pretty much never going to die. Or you can go Phase Rush, which I will say, I had been kind of critical of the Phase Rush before, but after playing sort of against it several times, it is actually pretty nice, especially when you're trying to roam and ward and, like, a bad situation happens, right? You get cut off by the jungler where stuff just starts going south. You can proc this Phase Rush and actually run away pretty well. So you can just, activate your E, Q, that's 2 spells, and then just headbutt them away, and then you're going to proc Phase Rush. So basically you can just headbutt the jungler away and then just run off at, like, 1,000,000 miles an hour. So it's pretty annoying. Or you can even go in for some light trades, right? Like, you can go in, just WQE, just get a quick trade in there and then run away if you want. Or if you're going for the kill, you can chase them down with Phase Rush and make sure that you get that E proc for the stun, even if they flash. So you are a lot squishier with that build, but it does double down on your roam potential as well with Nimbus Cloak plus Celerity plus Water Walking. And if you take Hex Flash, which it doesn't look like a lot of people are, a lot of people are doing it second. I was like, what? But those are primary runes. So yeah, if you go Hex Flash and then, either Cosmic Insight or Biscuits or just whatever secondary, I think that is pretty nice because, again, once you have that movement speed, it allows you to get your W in there faster. So I think that's pretty cool. You are squishier with that build, but you're just, like, super fast. And that could be nice. So if you're good at the roams, if you're good at getting flanks, then I think Alistar is a solid champ. You know, the main thing that separates him from Leona is, again, he's not going to have as much sustained CC in fights that drag out to be longer. And he's not going to be as tanky early on. you know, the first 5 levels as someone like a Leona, and his engage range is not as far away, but it is that guarantee, right? They can't Gale Force out of it. I mean, I guess Ezreal can blink out of it. They might be able to Gale Force if they do it fast enough on your W, but it's a lot harder to dodge an Alistar combo or to react to it, especially when he's coming in really fast, than it is something like Leona or Thresh or something like that. So anyways, Premier Engage has some good sustain in lane, unkillable late game, even if you don't have a lot of tank items. So very good, especially at Challenger Plus. What is, I haven't kept up with the actual win rates in Pro. But yeah, in solo queue, it can be kind of rough because a lot of times AD carries won't play around it properly, right? Where they're just going to die if you roam. But then also, like, even if they do play around it absolutely properly, it still may not work out unless you, like, have a lot of knowledge about the game state. So it looks like he is actually doing very well. He's super popular right now, 54%, 54 on Rel. It looks like Thresh is not doing that well. Nautilus is not doing that well. Leona's okay. Recon looks like he's having a bit of a tough time in Pro. So Ali is doing very well in Pro right now. Okay, let's keep moving. May not get to the 30 minutes, but let's see if we can at least keep it under 40. Okay, Thresh is another one that I think is really strong, and kind of like Recon, there's kind of an asterisk with him in that he's very hard to play. Most people are not that great on Thresh, but he has the tools, and he is super versatile right now. He's got the hooks. You can use it, you know, aggressively. You don't have to take it, right? You can just use it for poke or just use it to set your team up as well, to set up a Gen W or to set up, you know, a Hecarim ult or whatever. So you don't have to go in, and that's something that's different from someone like a Leona or a Nautilus in that you're going in, right, most of the time. And so you have to build very tanky, and you have to be ready to go in terms of Aftershock and all this stuff, and you're putting your life on the line. With Thresh, you don't have to do that, right? You can. If it looks like a good chance to go in, you can go in, but you don't have to, right? So that's pretty nice. And then you do have your Lantern, of course. You can use that defensively to pull people out of situations. You can use it offensively to pull people forward. So there's a lot of cool plays you can make with that. You have Flay, which is very good at, it's one of the highest skill cap abilities in the game just because of how you have to aim it, which is really weird. It's like over your shoulder, but you can make a lot of really good plays. You know, Tristana's trying to jump away, you can Flay her back. Lucian's trying to dash away, you can Flay him back. Leona's trying to engage on your ADC, you can Flay her back. You can Flay the Zac out of the air, or the Jarvan's flag and drag, or the Xin Zhao dash, or Lee Sin dash. Like, there's all these mobility things you can stop very easily with Flay, which is on a pretty low cooldown. Or not easily, but when you get good on the champ, you have a lot of tools. So he's got good engage, he's got good peel, and he even has some pretty versatile itemization. A lot of people have been building him almost Enchanter-esque, right, with like Locket plus Redemption, and then they're taking Guardian just because you can play so far back. So he actually does have more scaling, I think. Now the win rate does kind of fall off a cliff here, but I'll say he has more utility late game than some of the other tanks like the Leona, like the Nautilus, just because he can get those team fight items. And more people are trying out Shirelias on him too, which could be alright. He does have AP ratios. Like, that's really committing to the squishy state of mind, but that can help you engage pretty well. So maybe he's someone where Shirelias could work out pretty well. And then, as you can see, you have a bunch of different options that have different purposes, right? You've got Zeke's, you've got Knight's Vow, Redemption. You can even get him at Kale's if you want to. That's not too uncommon, especially in Pro. You do have a shield with your W. And if you are getting something like a Locket first, the extra 20% healing and shielding does affect your Locket. So that is kind of handy. So you just have a lot of different options: defense, offense, offensive items, defensive items. He's just probably the most versatile support in the game. He's right up there with Recon in terms of other stuff you can do. So I think he is harder to play than Recon because he has more skill shots, and the timing is just really difficult sometimes with the Flay. And it's just the kinds of choices you can make, and if you make the wrong choice, you can get hard punished for it. So anyways, he's really strong. And then Rel, I still think is pretty good. She has been nerfed, but usually you're only getting off one of your W's in fights anyways, even before the nerf. So she does break shields, which is pretty nice against anyone that's going to be getting Locket or Sterix. And then you do have to be careful into peeling champs. So against something like a Thresh or a Janna, you can knock her out of her transformation when she tries to jump in with her W. So those, or Alistar, can headbutt you out of it. So any of these displacement champs can be pretty good against Rel. But she just brings a lot to the table, right? She can have, you just kind of run at them. If you turn into the horse first and then charge is a better form of engage in a lot of situations that many people will use. It just kind of depends. But then you also do give the armor, and you have quite a lot of CC, right? If you charge in, you flip them back, you knock them over, then you stun them with your W, and then you R and hold them in place. If they don't have a dash or a flash, you know, it's like 4 or 5 seconds of CC. So I do think that she is pretty strong, and she's very mobile too, right? Whenever you're in horse form, you're actually moving around pretty fast. So I think she's pretty good. Just going to go for the standard Locket, Knight's Vow type of build with her. And then we have Bard. I have not seen a lot of Bard right now. I did play him a lot near the end of last season. I still feel like he got hit pretty hard by the removal of Athene's, but he does still have a really good win rate. So I don't know. Maybe I need to try him out a little bit more. This is interesting. People are trying out Cosmic Drive on him. Locket is a pretty good, almost no-brainer. It's just a solid team fight option. I think that Shirelia's could be okay as well. I probably wouldn't do Mandate anymore after the nerfs. But he's got really good engage with his ult. Kind of like Leona, though. If they have Gale Force or a dash or flash or whatever, they can get out of your ult. But if you can manage to run up and auto-attack them first, or if they use their movement on somebody else, or like to dodge somebody else's skill, you just kind of got to play around it a little bit more. But that can be strong. And then it looks like not a ton of people are doing Cosmic Drive, but that is nice. It does give you a lot of extra movement speed. His AP ratios aren't great, and that's a very expensive item, so that is a little weird. I know someone on stream was asking me about Frozen Heart. I think this is a good option if they do have a lot of AD. It does allow you to stay in the fight and just auto-attack more with your meeps. It allows you to take more aggressive positioning to try to get your Q stuns. So I do think against heavy AD teams that can be pretty solid. It is also 2,500 gold, which is nice. Deadman's Plate is still okay. It doesn't have as much armor, but it does have the health component to it, which is nice, and it does give you that movement speed to rotate around the map pretty well. So all of these options can potentially be pretty good. So he is still super versatile, very high skill cap. You do have a lot of gank potential and mobility potential with your E, so I don't know. Maybe I'll try him out again. Ionians are super good on him, and they did buff Ionians a while back, so we'll have to try him out. But yeah, on 1 and 2 items, I think that he does have a lot of potential. I don't think a lot of people are playing him pro. No, there was a movement there for a little while where people were playing him, but I think that's when Mandate was a lot stronger. Okay, and then Janna, I still think is pretty good situationally. She does have really nice peel potential, especially against stuff like a Rel, like an Alistar, like a Leona. If you have a really high impact AD carry, you know, a Jinx or Twitch, stuff like that, especially things that are going to be building crit, which are most AD carries, then I think that she can be pretty strong, but she doesn't have engage. She can rotate around the map really quickly, which is nice, but she is sort of vulnerable, and you're kind of relying on your team to be able to make the plays. That's why I have her a little bit lower than Lulu. Lulu is similar. She can't make plays by herself, but she can speed up allies with the W, and that helps a ton with like the Darius, Hecarim, Olaf, all that kind of stuff. Then you can use your ult proactively, not only to save somebody, but to be aggressive and get that knock up and apply that slow and just help out with the engage. So I think Lulu's just a little bit better in terms of offense, but then Janna's got better like raw peeling potential. And last few picks here, and then we'll go ahead and call it a day. Nami's still okay. She's just sort of lost in the shuffle. If you hit your bubble, it's good, but kind of like what I've said with other champs, there's a lot of mobility in the game right now, so it's difficult to hit that. And then your wave can work, but again, it's slow, and unless someone else has already hit a piece of CC, or unless you've already hit your bubble, sometimes that can be a little awkward. You do have really solid trading early on with your W, and the fact that there is less sustain in the lane is good for that. So if you have someone like a Sivir or a Caitlyn or some other high-pressure AD carry poke type of champion in lane, then just kind of spamming W can be nice, especially against other enchanters who can't really engage on you that well. But I think in general she's going to get outscaled. She doesn't give a lot of buffs to your allies. You do have your E, which is nice for a little bit of on hit, and then you do have slows and you do have some speed ups. So that's nice, but it's not the same as like Lulu's picks, which is like 100 damage per auto attack pretty much permanently in a team fight. And then Janna gives the extra AD with her shield. So And Lulu has that point-click polymorph that can't miss unless it's like Windwalled or something. So I think Lulu's a little bit more reliable, but Nami definitely can be good in the right situations. And the Nautilus, he does have a huge hitbox on his hook. His ultimate can't be dodged, which is very nice. He does have some wave clear with his E, which is really handy for pushing waves, getting priority to get Dragon, to roam, to get a preferential back timing, all that kind of stuff. He's just a little bit squishier. And then Double Lifted Meteos, we're talking about this, why they don't see Nautilus as much, and why he has like a lower win rate, like 44% right now, versus like Rel and Alistar that are 54%. And it's just that he's just kind of made of paper. Like, his defensive steroids are not that good. Like, his W is not that great, and you don't max it early, versus like Leona, you are maxing the W, which makes you tankier. And I think with Rel, you're maxing the W as well, which is going to give you that bigger shield when you go in, if you go from horse to dismounted. So he does have a lot of perks to him. It's just a little more dangerous, especially if you fall behind. And in these big team fights, you definitely can get blown up. And then Seraphine I have down a bit lower after the nerf. She is still like pretty good. She has nice harassment early, and then you have your ult for this is like ridiculously long range, like huge hitbox. They did increase the cooldown on that massively to 180 seconds base. That's kind of a feels bad, but she does have good poke. She has some nice auras. And then that ultimate is really good in team fights overall. Okay, last few champs. Xyron Brand, they're okay. They did buff Leandri's this patch, so that is nice, but it's still a very expensive item for them to purchase. They're squishy, they're vulnerable to ganks, but they can hard dominate the lane, especially at gold and lower, and particularly against immobile supports and 80 carries that you can just, you know, spam your abilities on. So they are kind of lane kingdom, you know, lane dominant champs, so they pair really well with stuff like Jin, especially, or even Misfortune. Just other champs that can set them up and do a lot of damage. And they are very good if your team can force the enemy into 5v5 team fights. So if you get ahead early and then everyone's grouping up in team fighting, just kind of YOLO A-ramming, then they are very good. They both have a lot of damage in team fights, especially if you have someone else on your team that can engage or start the fight. Or if you get really dominant vision control and you can pick people off while they're rotating. It's just in a skirmisher style meta versus really high mobility, they can be problematic. If you're having to constantly walk between lanes, especially in the dark, because they're split pushing you, or you just can't get vision control, then they are extremely vulnerable to ganks and assassins. So that is problematic, and you're almost never going to get tankier items. You can get eventually Demonic Embrace, but you're still going to get blown up to like the Zed, the Talon, the Kha'Zix, the Hecarim. There's just so many champs right now that can blow you up. So they are good, but I really prefer Maokai. He does a similar amount of damage. He's also very good in team fights, and he has a lot of CC, and he's got that vision with the seeds. So it's a lot easier to get that vision control so that the assassins can't sneak up on you as easily. So I just think Maokai is a much better version right now of what Xyron Brand are doing. He doesn't have as much poke in lane. He can still kill people. If the jungler comes down especially, you just flash W on them and they're dead, because you're just going to tie them up with so much CC. So he does have some kill threat, but it's not as much poke usually, unless the enemy team is just kind of brain dead and just walking into the bushes and letting you get those seeds. He does keep people out of the bushes though, which is pretty nice. So like the Blitzcrank can't just park it in a bush and, you know, completely zone you off a wave. So anyways, they're okay, but there might be better choices. Blitzcrank's okay. He's just very one-dimensional. If you hit your hook every time, he feels like a god. If you miss, you just don't do anything. It is nice that less people are going to be taking Banshee's Veils. That is good. And the fact that there are less tanks, that means there are more, like, good targets for your hook. So that is nice, but I'd rather play something that has, you know, a little bit of a better plan B. Morgana, very good against some of these engaged champs. Maokai, you know, Leona, Rel. I guess Rel can break her shield pretty quickly. But good in a lot of champs. I just feel like, you know, kind of like Blitzcrank, she's two-dimensional. She does have her Black Shield and her Q, which are both very strong. It's just her other two abilities don't do anything. She's relatively immobile. So she's okay, but I think against, like, better players, it starts to get harder and harder to make her worthwhile. The Sona, Soraka, Yumi are very good if they are left alone and they're able to scale and you're opting into 5v5 team fights. They're pretty strong. They can be vulnerable otherwise. Pyke did get some buffs. His win rate didn't really move that much. He requires a snowball, but against squishier champs, if you are getting the kills, it is pretty handy. It is hard to hit your ultimate when everyone has so many dashes, though. Can be good. Senna puts up some pretty good lane pressure, but her items are expensive. And that's pretty much going to be it. I do want to keep it under 40 minutes, so thank you very much. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.